All right, two of Buharis News analysts, Dr. Sam Amadi and Abiodun Adeniyi, they join us now to provide an insight into Nigeria's 61st independence anniversary. Glad to have you both gentlemen join us. Let me start with you, Abiodun. You listened to the president's speech, but let me start from here. We have been told that our earlier leaders were selfless, service-oriented, full of enthusiasm, and patriotic. Would you say the same of the present crop of leaders we have today in Nigeria?
Not really, but maybe we should also be fair to ourselves by not judging the present leaders with the values of the past, but it is also very instructive for our present leaders to learn from the selflessness of the past leaders. We had past leaders that existed within some circumstances that you would say enhance their performances. Then we were at the beginning stage of our nation building process in the post-independent period. Now we're existing within a much more complex environment, a much more problematic environment where we have a growing population, in the face of limited resources. So of course there's evidence to show that we lack levels of ingenuity, levels of creativity, to find our way around these emergent challenges, where you can situate the present crop of leaders within those challenges, but what we need from them, it's that level of commitment, that level of selflessness, at least, at the level of attitude. If we have some kind of resemblances with the leaders of old, then we will have done better than we're presently doing. But we have to also remember that nation building is not a one-day job. Nation building, especially in a heterogeneous society like ours, is about working towards homogenization. How much have we done in this regard? How much have we done not to remind ourselves of our differences? It's not about physical infrastructure, even if that is conditional, that is instrumental to the construction of nation, but it's also about the construction of the mind, the building of Nigerianness, the formation of patriotic citizens, the building of nationalistic citizens, such that they will have faith in their system, they will have this sense of collectivity, this sense of commonness, and this sense of belief, in their entity, particularly the entity called Nigeria in this circumstance.
All right, let me bring in Dr. Sam Amadi. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Sam. Happy Independence Day to you. Well, some would say, forget independence from the colonialists. What Nigeria needs is independence from poor leadership, from visionless leadership. Let's talk about President Buhari's speech today. Was it inspiring enough? Did it go far enough, especially when you hear him say that Nigeria's unity is non-negotiable?
Well, I think it's trademark President Buhari kind of speech, details, and then reflecting, as usual, his own proclivities and concerns. And again, in that sense, one can say, yes, it reflected what we expected. And of course, the really big issues for him, COVID, security, national unity, and that's also rhymes with the global outlook. It follows from his script at the UN. So basically, not too much different. But what one could take, two quick points will be one, is looking at the facts around pluralism and heightened agitation for what people can call self-determination, fiscal federalism, some degree of regionalism, or other sorts of kinds of localism. Maybe the speech should have struck a high keynote around not just declaring ad infinitum the fact of our indivisibility, but working around restoring some degree of, promote some degree of social trust and understanding or giving inkling as to how government wants to reshape broad policies to respond to the fact of pluralism and its heightened agitation. That's missing, especially in the psychology, the climate today of distrust of government, in a climate of growing agitation for what we call citizenship. Of course, the threat of possible divestment of trust by a large segment of the country. So the speech should have taken a higher note and more reassuring. And again, less, if you like, less authoritarian and a little bit more political. So that could be missing. Again, the other issue is the lack of sensitivity to the fact that during the week, we had so much talk around sponsors of Boko Haram, released by another country and high profile as well. And government sources say, look, we're not going to be, we're going to play dead brain, so to say. We're not going to make it public. And this is the president now talking about also the dangerous issues around secessions and say, look, in this case, we are going to go all out, which is the right thing to say. But maybe the speech should have linked it together and said, look, we're also working on this discovery around high-placed Nigerians who are driving Boko Haram insurgents, who are financing it, actually cited by a government in a document, and we have it. We will ensure that all these saboteurs, all these persons are going to be dealt with. So you want to avoid at this point any speech that portrays you as maybe turning a blind eye on one, equivalence and the other. So speech right now at this point should bear in mind innuendos. What is not said could be more dangerous than what is said. So I think on those two measures, we expected more. You need to be careful because, like I said, we have false narratives. We have, incomplete truths being peddled. So therefore, a speech should, as much as possible, be sensitive and preempt those kind of allusions and condemnations. But I think it wasn't too sensitive to those contexts. And finally, I think the speech, as usual, like that emotional chord. This is a period of celebrating Nigeria independence. Things might be bleak, but they say that presidents are traders in hope and optimism. And so we should have some big brush around, look, we are recovering and we're looking good. We just need to come together, and this is the way government will move us in a new trajectory so that we can recover and be this great country that in 1960, the Time magazine carried Nigeria front page. So we've moved from optimism to high pessimism, and that speech should be one of the tonics to recharge us and kind of elevate us to a pedestal where policy and its implementation can now help us keep afloat and keep focus on the high ground. But those are the missing links. Otherwise, he did well, long speech for that matter, and he didn't drop the ball at any point. So those are the good and bad sides.
All right, thank you, Dr. Amadi. Let me come to you, Abiodun. Well, the president says arrest, prosecute troublemakers, hope to settle grievances peacefully without spilling blood. Nigerians should embrace peace. Careless inciting talks has led to deaths. What do you make of his speech in terms of maybe creating an environment for dialogue?
Well, we're in a democracy. First, it's okay to also acknowledge that you do not expect the president to sound differently. You expect him, to come from a moral high ground, admonishing the citizens on the importance of peace, and preaching, harmony, rapprochement, and consensus building. So I think it lived up to expectation in that regard. But we also have to understand that we're in a democracy, and people, can be very celebratory in terms of how they express themselves in that kind of atmosphere. So what I think is that it's not really about people being told or being guided on what to say and what not to say. It's as long as they are not armed, as long as they are not forcing or trying to assault the other person, people can be as expressive as possible. What the system needs to do is to guide itself, empower itself, enhance itself, to withstand, whatever kind of utterances anybody will want to say. As humans, we have this innate desire, to voice our thoughts, to feel as free as possible, and that's the hallmark of democracy. You do not forget what I said earlier about nation building. Nation building also thrives around the germination of thoughts and ideas, and it comes when people voice their opinion. How do we harness those opinions? How do we collate them? How do we sieve them? How do we separate the wheat from the chaff? That should really be what matters, because that's what defines a democratic experiment, really. In fostering, in building our nation, we have chosen the path of freedom. We've chosen the path of happiness and prosperity, through representational system of governance, constitutional democracy. There are some characteristics that come with it, and that's what we that's what we see being showcased around and about our system. We're not towing the other part, which is the dictatorial part, like we saw in the evolution of Russia, in the USSR, for instance, or in the evolution of China. Our own is freedom. Like we want to toe the path of France or China. France, after the French Revolution, of course, that was why we saw deliberate attempt to nation build. And that's what we're asking ourselves to do, to minimize the disadvantages of our difference, harness it, for growth, development, and of course, prosperity.
Just finished.
All right, time for a short break. Gentlemen, do stay with us. There's more to come. We'll continue to explore the president's speech today.
Glad to have you back. You're still watching Newsnight here on Arise News. And President Muhammadu Buhari says he has directed the lifting of the suspension of Twitter, provided certain stipulated conditions are met. Well, this is to allow citizens to use the platform for positive engagements. The president says his administration is committed to ensuring that digital companies use their platform to enhance the lives of Nigerian citizens.
Embrace the digital economy in Nigeria. We are fully aware of the prospects and the perils. Our policies have been developed to enable Nigerians to take advantage of the prospects and avoid the perils of digital technologies. Social media is a very useful platform that has enabled millions of Nigerians to connect with loved ones, promote their businesses, socialize, and access news and other information. However, recent events have shown that the platform is not just an innocuous platform for information dissemination. Rather, some users have misused the platform to organize, coordinate, and execute criminal activities, propagate fake news, and promote ethnic and religious sentiments. To address these negative trends, the federal government of Nigeria suspended the operation of Twitter in Nigeria on June 5, 2021, to allow the government to put measures in place to address these challenges.
Well, President Muhammadu Buhari has again blamed middlemen for the hike in the prices of food items. He says middlemen are responsible for food shortages. He accuses them of creating artificial shortages through the hoarding of essential commodities for profiteering. Buhari says the agricultural sector remains the key to the country's economic diversification, as agriculture is a consistent driver of the non-oil sector.
The agricultural sector remains key to our economic diversification efforts, as the sector has been a consistent driver of the non-oil sector, contributing 22.35% and 23.78% to the overall GDP in the first and second quarter of 2021.
All right, Dr. Sam Amadi, Abiodun Adeniyi, both Arise News analysts, still with us on Newsnight tonight on a day like this. Nigeria marks 61 years of independence. Dr. Sam Amadi, let me come to you on the conditional lifting of the ban on Twitter. And let's look at some of the conditions placed by Mr. President there. That national security cohesion is one of the conditions, registration and representation, fair taxation, and the final one, dispute resolution. What exactly do these conditions mean to you?
Well, first, I think some of them are, a couple of them are maybe concrete and implementable and follows from maybe a good faith policy of government to make sure that Twitter and any other social media platform plays by the rules. So you can say, well, government can decide to register, but the question has always been, these are basically offshore and universal services, so you have to develop clear protocol for what registration means. If your citizens can use VPN to access as we are doing. What do you mean by decision? Taxation policy, of course, government, if they can coerce or through policy or some kind of negotiation, get these companies to pay taxes to Nigeria, raise revenue. That does not work against citizens. That's fair, that's good, as long as it doesn't lead to total dissuading them from getting involved, because Twitter is also a platform for entrepreneurship. It's a platform for household income. It's a platform for social communications and business communication that are important to drive the economy and to drive social well-being. So as long as government can navigate those concerns and get them to be taxed properly, fairly, without constructing some kind of opportunity for them to keep up from the Nigerian market, that's fair. But what is really worrisome, if we want to talk about national cohesion, really, it's not Twitter, it's not any Twitter or any other social platform to kind of promote, it's not the one that promotes national unity. Now look at what other countries have done through a democratic process. You can set up agencies and institutions that deal with fake news, disinformation in many ways. One of the ways is also to be very smart and proactive in fighting, understanding, highlighting those fake information and helping your citizens avoid some platforms and helping them to know when flag some information as maybe fake, as a hate crime, and of course sometimes you prosecute persons who act on them depending on the degree of how they act on those information. But the notion of saying, look, Twitter, the condition is promoting national unity or solidarity or cooperation doesn't make much sense to me. Again, the other issue around positive communication, it depends rightly underlines that Twitter, social media is good for business communication and positive. Now, those adjective positive communication, the question then is, how are you going to, what would Twitter do that shows that citizens use it for positive communication? Because the lack of positivity occurs as they are communicating, and Twitter has also developed protocols to deal with those flagging, getting people out. Again, the whole idea, I think it's a bad decision that they made in the first place. The response was disproportionate and maybe not the right kind of response. And so government is finding a way to walk back and still keep some degree of credibility. But again, I think maybe the messaging is too open. The fact that we are talking about what happened, the build up to the ban is about Twitter deleting the president's tweet, and again, taking it back to how Nigeria uses Twitter as a platform, and then coming out to say, look, we want to bring it back, but they're going to do this. I think it's an over-communication, overkill. They could probably have said, look, we're getting back to Twitter, we've spoken with Twitter, working on all these conditions, and Twitter will be back. And because this is in line with our policy of promoting data literacy, promoting social communication, democracy, open society, and this is an economy. But I think we should be really careful how we try to imitate closed societies. People in government talk about China, example. We don't have those kind of leverage that they have in the international community. Again, these are not democracies, and even if they are doing well socio-economically, they are operating from a much less plural and much more cohesive.
Let's leave it there. Okay. Abiodun, just this last question that you will take on that a minute or so. The president talked about high-profile financiers of Carnival vigorously pursuing them, including a member of the National Assembly as a financier. What do you make of that president's statement?
Well, that was a very chilling revelation coming from the president, and it was also very disturbing, because what it means is that maybe a politician will at the end of the day be apprehended and probably prosecuted, and we know what it means when some of these politicians are prosecuted. Meanings will be read into it, of course there could be tension in the land, and of course it will distract from other issues that should rather bother us, But like I said earlier today somewhere else, that maybe what the president should rather focus on now is to maybe show the greater grace and of course concentrate on what I think concentrate more on how he can leave a legacy beyond the infrastructure and utilities that is reputed to have succeeded in. So that's what I think I should be concerned about. Peace building, consensus fostering ahead of the 2023 presidential election. Because we're a complex country. Each matters are always complex. There's no way we can begin prosecuting one political office holder or the other now that meanings will not be read into it. And that's not the way I think we should go. But But this is not saying that justice should not be done
exactly
if there is if there's a genuine reason for it. But of course, we know how convoluted these things can be, how issues can be, and we know how sometimes it can be very problematic raising evidence around some of these issues. That's my take really. Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it there. Some are already saying the president didn't go far enough by mentioning those behind Boko Haram. Also, Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you so much. Abiodun, Adeniyi, thank you both, gentlemen, for joining us.